Alright YouTube, I'm going to do a quick video today about the complete and correct teardown of a Glock pistol. This is the most simplistic automatic firearm that I know of to tear down and to put back together. You shouldn't be intimidated by taking this down, and you shouldn't rely on anybody else to do it for you. Now, on the complete opposite end of this spectrum is the reason I have this 1911 sitting behind it. This particular one is a Remington R1 Enhanced. I really like this gun. It's a steel frame, steel slide, 5-inch 1911. Now, tearing this completely down is a completely different ball game from this. If you've never had the trigger out of a 1911, or if you've never tore one completely down, every piece of it, then you should. You're missing out on a swell time. But the Glock, on the other hand, is simple. Everybody that owns one ought to be able to tear one down. That's just the way it is. You shouldn't have to rely on anybody else to tear down your firearm for cleaning or for repair or anything else. If you don't have enough sense to get it apart and put it back together, maybe you shouldn't have it. That's all I'm saying. Then again, I know people that call themselves a mechanic that can't even change their own oil. So, that being said, we're going to go into this Glock 17. This happens to be a Gen 3, but that's not important for what we're talking about today. This is going to cover all the Glocks. They're all the same, except for the 42 and the 43. There's a little bit of difference there in those two. But there's 100 videos or 1,000 videos out there of people tearing these pistols down. Some of them do it wrong. Most of them don't. Most of them do it fine. Some of them are doing things that shouldn't be done. I'm going to do it correctly, and I'm going to try to do it on camera, and I'm going to try to do it quickly. This will be a two-part video. I'm going to do the frame today. Part 2 will be the slide. So step 1, as always, make sure your gun is clear. Nothing in the chamber, no magazine. Check it again and again. Then point the gun, safe direction. Even though you just checked it, you know it's clear. Still point it in a safe direction. Pull the trigger. Slightly pull back the slide. Pull down the slide lock tabs, and the slide will come right off. I'm not going to use the slide in part 1. Now we got a frame. Only thing we need to take this thing down is a punch. This happens to be a Glock tool. They give this to me when I took the armorer's class. It's not necessary. Any kind of punch that'll fit in these 3 pins will do the job. Now, if you notice, there's 3 pins, like I said. 2 above the trigger, 1 larger one, 1 smaller one. 1 on the back of the grip holds the trigger in. First one you want to take out is the larger of the 2, the one closest to the trigger. You do not have to hit these pins. I've seen people lay this frame on a roll of tape and beat the mess out of a punch to knock this pin out. You're doing damage to your slide holdback if you do that. Push it, finger, just hand pressure only. If it won't move, you're going to have to move this slide holdback. Just move it around slightly, and it'll go. It's not as easy on camera. Nothing ever is. But if you'll move that around, it'll go. No hitting necessary. Do not hit it. Once you pull that pin out, you can pull the slide holdback out. Notice I didn't call that a slide release. Don't use that to release the slide. That's to hold back, to hold the slide open. That's what it's for. It's not meant to release the slide. That's just causing unnecessary wear on your firearm. What's holding you, if it don't come out immediately, is you notice there's 2 grooves in this pin. That groove is catching on the hole in this slide holdback. You move it around, it'll come right out. Don't hit it. If you hit it, you're going to make this you're going to damage this. Now when you get this, now this is not a high dollar part here, but you still don't want to damage it if you don't have to. When you get it out, check it. Make sure your spring's tight. You can see it's crimped. Well, I don't know if you can see it or not on my camera, but this little spring is crimped. Make sure that's tight. That's done. Next pin you're going to push out be the one above it. Holds down this section of this metal rail right here. It should, remember, push out. Don't hit it. Just push it out. This pin is also metal. This is a steel pin. It's smaller than the other one. Push it out. Then you can pry this out, and it's done. This gun here is dirty because I've put 200 or 300 rounds through it since I've cleaned it. So that's done. Your last pin is the one on the back of the frame. Holds the trigger group in. This pin is plastic. Again, push it out. Done. Plastic. Now you can pull the trigger out. There it is. Simple. You're down. The only thing left in this frame is the mag release, which I'm not going to take out. It's easy. If you look down through the grip, you'll see a spring, another leaf spring. You pop it out with a screwdriver. It's pretty self-explanatory if you got any common sense at all. I'm not going to take it out because it scratches your frame up a little bit to take it out, and it's not necessary to take it out unless it's broken, which is rare. What I will take out is the slide lock. If you'll notice, if you can, there's a leaf spring in the top of this, or in the bottom of this frame. You push it down with your punch, and that'll fall out. There it is, simple as that. This is your slide lock. Some people call it your takedown tabs. Call it whatever you want, but that's it. And when you put this back in, there's a groove in it. It's kind of a hat shaped. There's a groove in one side of the top up here. That groove goes up and facing the rear. Remember that, up and to the rear. Try to pay attention to the parts when they come out so you can put them back in just like they come out. The little groove goes up and to the rear. Simple as that. Now that's pretty much it. That's your frame, tore all the way down, except for the slide, for the mag release. I'm not going to take that out, but it's not difficult. It's just not necessary. You should never have to take that out unless it's broke. The only other parts you could tear into would be your trigger. Excuse me. And that's simple. Just pay attention to it. Look at it like it is. Don't be intimidated. Pay attention to it. Pull forward. This is your transfer bar. This is your connector. I know I'm not doing a very good job. This is your transfer bar. Goes from the trigger itself back. That's the transfer bar. This is the connector. Now, to get that loose, pull forward on the whole thing and turn it. And it's out. It's released. Notice you'll have a spring here. It's an S spring. Pay attention to how it's hooked. Before you take it apart, take a picture of it, write it down, whatever you got to do. But pay attention to how the hooks are. One hook's facing up, one hook's facing down. This is your connector. This happens to be a Ghost 3.5 pound connector, which will get your trigger down to probably about 4.5 pounds. Don't be fooled by the name of it. If you want to do the 25-cent trigger job, it won't really make your trigger any lighter, but it'll certainly make it a little smoother. You polish the connector on the outside here. Now to change this connector, you just pry it out with a little flat screwdriver, push the new one in, simple as that. The part that changes it from 3.5 to, well, the part that makes it go from 5.5 to 6 down to about 4.5 this is a stock one, is the angle of these little tabs. That's the only difference. I apologize for my camera work. That's the only difference, is the angle of this tab. But anyway, to do the 25-cent trigger job, you're going to polish this part right here on the connector, and then you're going to polish the back side of this transfer bar where it comes in contact with the connector. Where there's metal to metal contact, you're going to polish it. That's just to smooth it up a little, to where that metal's rubbing on metal, to make it a little smoother. And that's your 25-cent trigger job, most of it. The other part, you can polish the top of this little cross here. You polish the top of it, and you want to polish the top of this part that sticks up here, which disengages the striker safety, the drop safety. Polish the very thin edge that rubs against. Anywhere you got metal to metal, you want to polish it. Now, when you put it back together, if you're cleaning it or whatever, you don't have to tear it down this far to clean it, but if you do, you want to put a drop of oil where these two pieces of metal, where this transfer bar contacts this connector. Put one small drop of oil right there, and that's it. That's all you need. And that's basically it for the frame. That's how simple it is. Completely the opposite end of the spectrum from this 1911. Now, to put it back together, you go in the opposite order. Drop your trigger mechanism back in. Take your plastic pin, the only one that's plastic. I pushed them out from left to right, so I'm going to put them back in from right to left. You don't need to hit them, you just push them. If you got to hit it, something's wrong. Push that one in. The next one you want to put in is the smaller of the two that are above the trigger. But before you do that, you want to put this section of rail back in. Push it in. Take your smaller pin. Finger. That's all you need to push it in with your finger. Get it centered with your punch. Done. You want to put your, remember your slide hold back, slide lock, the groove to the top and to the rear. All you got to do is push down on the spring with your punch, slide it into position. It's nothing difficult. It's a little more difficult trying to do it on camera, I will say that. But it's nothing difficult about this whole operation. That's in. Pull it down, check it, make sure you're good to go. Then the last thing you got is your slide hold back. The spring right here rests on this smaller pin you put in first. So you just slide it into position. You can line up the hole. Take your larger pin, push it in with your hand. You don't need to beat it. You don't need to hit it. And that's it. That's done. Now, complete disassembly and reassembly of the frame. I'll do the slide in part 2. It's just about as simple. So there you go. Don't be intimidated. Just pay attention to what you're doing. A little common sense. Pay attention. It'll go back together. And there you go. You don't have to rely on anybody else to work on your firearm. You can do it yourself. Now I'll do part 2 and cover the slide. Thank you very much.